Could you imagine if Kawhi Leonard doesn't even get them to a conference finals? Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not looking at Paul George. I'm looking at him.
Fair point. I'll say this. If he chokes in a Game 7 again, I think you'd be right. I don't anticipate that because he's never done it before.
I don't either.
He's always been, again, look at Kawhi's playoff record. He's one of the greatest players who ever lived in the playoffs. Yeah. He's better than normally in the regular season. That's a great player.
Well, saying, no, I disagree with you there. I'm not saying numbers-wise. What I'm saying is you weren't asked to do anything in the regular season when you were with the Spurs compared to what they asked you to do in the playoffs.
Okay,
they
asked for Toronto.
More. I'm just saying, but they asked for more. In Toronto, yeah, I mean, but you would consider, but you remember, he took about 22 games off. It was the load management thing. He wasn't asked to do that.
He was there for the playoffs.
He was there for the playoffs.
In the playoffs, he's been one of the greatest players ever in the playoffs. Okay. But he did choke in Game 7.
Remember those conditions.
So if he does that again, I'm with you. All right, that's on you, Kawhi. The pressure would be. But I'm saying this. Basically, he's not the GM LeBron is. LeBron looked at Miami and said, I'm going to take Wade and Bosh, put himself in a winning situation. Kyrie and Kevin Love, putting himself in a winning situation. All right, I'm only going to be able to have one dude with me in L.A. Who's that going to be? AD. Winning situation. AD's an MVP caliber player. Kawhi's only got to make a choice one time. That was to go to the Clippers and say, hey, bring me Paul George. Paul George then has to be a second banana who can play at almost an MVP level. He hasn't done it in the playoffs. Now, the reason he's with the Clippers and not the Lakers, Stephen A., is because LeBron tried to get him in L.A. Hey, come join me in AD. That's non-competitive. The league is not competitive.
And I respect you for that.
Kawhi's like, no, I'm going to compete against you.
I respect
the best available dude was Paul George.
Yeah, but that's you. Why don't you get the hell over it, Max? Why don't you stop hiding behind all of this stuff? Max, why don't you give him a Christmas card? Buy him a Christmas present. Invite him over to dinner. You want to celebrate
Paul
that?
George got to step up.
No. What I'm saying to you is that, yeah, that's what he did.
Yeah.
I respect that. He did it. But in the end, it's about what you're going to do. You came to L.A. for a reason. You had them sacrifice the farm for a reason. You wanted Paul George. You wanted your point guard. They've given you everything you wanted. And we know he was asking for some other stuff, the private jets and everything else. We probably know he got that too.
Get it,
I'm not mad at him.
Get
it all. But in the end, you got to show up. And if Kawhi Leonard, listen, if the Los Angeles Clippers don't make it to the conference final.
Let me ask you something.
The number one person you must look at is Kawhi Leonard.
Let me ask you something. If they don't make it to the conference finals,
right?
And who do you predict it will be who has underperformed? Kawhi, Rondo, or Paul George?
I would tell you it would be Paul George based on history. Right. Based on history. Because Rondo shows up in the playoffs, and Kawhi has too, except Game 7 last year. But what I'm saying to you is, again, similar to what I was talking about with Westbrook, I know what you can do. I know your numbers. That's a given. The point is, you got to finish the job. And if you're Kawhi Leonard and you know, Ballmer did all of this because you're trying to build a new arena where the former LA
Because Kawhi said, get me Paul George or I'm not coming.
Where the LA Forum used to be, you're trying to build a new arena there. You're trying to establish yourself in LA. This is what you're trying to do. It's a big deal. That's why he did all of this.
So let me get this
straight.
And you
got to at least get us to the conference finals.
By that logic, though, like if LeBron, who chose Kyrie, right? Like he comes back to Cleveland because he sees Kyrie, goes, oh, I can win with this cat, right? And then brings in Kevin Love also. If Kyrie didn't play big in Game 7 against the Warriors and they lose, that's on LeBron? No, that's like LeBron identified a killer in Kyrie. If anything you want to criticize Kawhi about is that he thought Paul George had something in him, which might be there, by the way. I'm rooting for Paul George just like you are.
Paul George does
it
have
might be there, and he might do it, but he hasn't done it yet.
The problem with Paul George is that you're constantly asking him to be that dude that scores regardless of being contested, whatever. Nothing is coming easy for Paul George because nobody is facilitating anything easy for Paul George. That's why Rondo's going to be so important.
That's why the pressure's on him, because he has that now.
But I'm not saying that Paul George doesn't have to produce. I'm saying in the end, if the Clippers come up short, how dare anybody look at Paul George before they look at Kawhi Leonard? You didn't show up in Game 7 either.
So if Kawhi drops 30 a night, hits clutch shot after clutch shot, and they come up short against a monster like Denver or Utah, and Paul George
you're looking at it differently than me. You know what I'm looking at it, Max? If you're good enough to get to a Game 7, close. I'm not looking at Paul George to close. I'm looking at Kawhi to close. Now, if you get bum rushed in 5 or something like that, well, then that's different. But if you good enough to get to a game 7, what did I say when Allen Iverson went up against Kobe and Shaq? I went like this. Oh, AI gonna get you one. He gonna get you one.
When Jordan,
you get to a game 7, you Kawhi Leonard, you should be able to close.
When Michael Jordan went to a game 7 against the Pistons, defending champions, Scottie Pippen had a migraine, scored 2 points in 40 minutes, right? Was that on Jordan for not closing?
No, but that was before Jordan became a champion.
But
Kawhi's a two-time champion.
But you want to point to that game and say that's on Jordan because they got to a game 7?
But we were talking about we talk about the bad boy Pistons. They beat you. They made new rules because of what they did to Jordan. Yeah. Are you kidding me? You can't compare.
The point is, you're not looking at MJ, you're looking at Pippen.
Listen, Jordan got beat up. In the case of Kawhi Leonard, Jamal Murray dropped 40. 40.
I'm not arguing against that.
40.
I'm not arguing against Kawhi choking in this game 7. He just never choked before.
Could you have stopped Jamal Murray from dropping 40?
Nobody stopped Jamal Murray.
Oh, really?
No.
I thought Kawhi could.
No, nobody could stop Jamal Murray.
I thought Kawhi could.
Nobody could stop Jamal Murray. Stop.
I understand.
He just had a series against Donovan Mitchell. 50 points, no turnovers one game.
Listen,
50 with no turnovers.
Leonard, what is Kawhi Leonard known for? Why was he in MVP against Miami?
Defense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
But ain't no defensive player stopping that Jamal Murray.
Okay. Well, then you ain't that dude.
Kawhi's not that dude?
Then you ain't that dude.
Because he can't stop Jamal Murray?
Get to a conference finals.
I'm with it. His
things we've been working on and frustrated about early on in the season. You can finally see it come together, having a defensive mindset every single night.
We held them to 105 tonight, so, that's just a great defensive effort right there. I think we're just being more attention to detail. We're just playing hard from the first quarter to the, fourth quarter.
All right, Stephen A., after last night's game, we're thinking, who has the better chance to reach the finals? You think it's the Clippers after they made some moves or the Bucks?
It's the Milwaukee Bucks. Max Kellerman, for simple arithmetic reasons. They only got one team they need to go through pretty much. The Western Conference is wide open. Especially if, with the sole express purpose with the only exception, rather, is Anthony Davis if he's 100%. Then there's nothing to talk about. The Lakers will cakewalk to the finals. Outside of that, it's a crapshoot. I mean, when you look at the teams in the Western Conference, it's the Lakers, it's the Clippers, it's the Jazz, it's the Denver Nuggets, it's the Portland Trail Blazers, it's the Phoenix Suns. You just look at how loaded the Western Conference is with the Dallas Mavericks being an outside threat and what have you. We can't ignore that. In the Eastern Conference, it's about Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and Philly. Period. We can look at Miami. We can look at Boston as having an outside chance and stuff like that. But it really comes down to Milwaukee, Philly, and, of course, Brooklyn being the number one team. And what if Brooklyn has to face one of them before the other? See, I don't know if Milwaukee and Philly would have to go against each other before they face Brooklyn, because then from an arithmetic perspective, mathematical perspective, then obviously that would be different because that would be similar to what you have to go through in the Western Conference, but I'm not anticipating that. I'm anticipating them having to face only one of them. And I think it's a situation where it's just like, hey, that's what it is. Whereas in the Western Conference, I think the Western Conference is considerably more loaded. That's all. That's the only reason.
The Clippers, I think, are far more likely to win the championship than the Bucks.
No, I was talking about getting out.
Even getting the finals. I think to reach the finals, the Clippers are far more likely than the Bucks, and I'll tell you why. And I saw it last night again with Giannis. Giannis can hit a wide open three. If you put a little pressure on him defensively, he does not hit that shot. The philosophy will be the exact same as it's been. Mm-hmm. The difference being they have Drew Holiday,
right,
who's a clutch player in the playoffs. Right. But here's the problem, Stephen A.
Mm-hmm.
I saw James Harden and Kyrie Irving go through the best teams in the Western Conference, 5 straight games on the road, beat them all without KD. Once KD gets back, it's a wrap. But let's put Brooklyn aside. So they ain't getting out of the East if they have all 3 guys. Like, forget Milwaukee getting out of the East if Brooklyn's healthy. Let's say they're not. But Embiid is playing for Philadelphia. I don't think Milwaukee's better than Philadelphia. I'll tell you something else. In the playoffs, I don't know if Milwaukee's going to be better than Miami. They weren't last year. I don't know. But I look at this Clippers team with Kawhi and Paul George. The real issue with the Clippers is Paul George is not a star when they need him to be a star. They got Rondo. That's going to help that.
Okay.
It's going to help that. And it's going to help Kawhi because Kawhi doesn't have to play point forward.
Okay.
You look at how deep this team is. Really take Ibaka and Batum. Rondo, Ibaka, Batum, Kawhi, and Paul George, that's a lot. But then look at the bench. Zubac can really play.
Like Zubac, Lakers gave him up.
Yep. Marcus Morris can play. Kennard, do you know what Kennard's hitting? I know you didn't like that deal.
I don't.
Do you know what Kennard's shooting from 3 this year? I looked it up.
Yeah.
Almost 50%. He's shooting 49%. Taking 3 threes a game, shooting 49%. Reggie Jackson can play. Patrick Beverly, we know, can play. What about this kid? Man, he's good. Like, they have a deep, they go 11 deep on the Clippers for real with 11 dudes who can play and a real all-star quality starting 5. The Clippers, the real roadblock standing in their way is a healthy AD and LeBron, which we don't know is going to happen. Denver is real tough, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I did mention another.
Yeah, Denver's going to be real tough. But when I look at the Bucks and what they're capable of versus an unbeatable Brooklyn team, and I look at the Clippers fully loaded, I don't see a single team where I'm like, if everyone's healthy, the Clippers have no shot. I think everyone healthy, including the Lakers, the Clippers have a real good shot. If everyone's healthy in the East, Milwaukee has no shot. Milwaukee's never going to get by that Brooklyn team. Forget that.
I understand that mode of thinking, but we're coming from 2 different angles. I totally understand you're saying if everybody's healthy. I'm just thinking about the number of teams in the West that you have to compete with compared to what you have to compete with in the Eastern Conference. You have a top 3, and then there's everybody else. In the Western Conference, you have a top 6, top 7. And because of that, I think the road to prosperity is significantly tougher coming out of the West than it's going to be out of the Eastern Conference. That's the only reason why I say the Bucks have an easier path. It's not that ultimately if you face Brooklyn, Brooklyn's going to be easy than everybody. I'm picking them to win it all. I'm just simply saying that when you look at the road that you have to travel to get to that, I'm thinking it's far more difficult, just round by round, for the Clippers, I anticipate, than it would be
give you something else.
for the Milwaukee Bucks.
You know who I think matches up best with Brooklyn out of the West? I think it's actually the Clippers. I think the Clippers, because they have 2 dominant two-way wings. The whole key is, can Paul George perform under pressure?
Hold it.
That's
Hold
the
it.
whole
Hold
key.
it. With all due respect, and I love me some Paul George, one of my favorite people in the world, and I think he's a damn good player. And Kawhi Leonard is a silent assassin. We all know that, but I think he could elevate his level of leadership. Here's the bottom line.
Don't need to with Rondo.
Here's the bottom line. You don't get to call them great two-way players after they let Jamal Murray drop 40 in a Game 7.
They are. You're going to say they're not great two-way players?
No,
Kawhi?
What I'm saying to you is this. You're the man. It's a berth to the conference finals on the line. And not only do you lose, y'all fold offensively. Defensively, Jamal Murray dropped 40
one game, man.
Yeah, it's a Game 7. It matters.
After all the Game 7s or important games in Kawhi's career?
Let me tell you something right now. What have you done for me lately? I'm a Janet Jackson fan. And let me tell you something right now. What have you done for me lately matters to me. I'm telling you right now, I'm not questioning their abilities. I'm not saying that they're not these players. What I'm saying is the residual impact that was left behind, the indelible mark, is that you let Jamal Murray